I'm just starting my file here for what we're doing this weekend on this. What we're doing, I just put up here at this beginning just for our benefit to remind us we begin defining the text or text that we use. Well, I've given you that. That's a given. Okay. Okay. Secondly, determine the proper pericope, which is part of what we'll be doing. That is, how much of the text is critical for us so we don't get out of context here. Okay, that'll be clear, and we will either know we've got too much or not enough when we get a review of the historical stuff and, let's say, the outline that somebody gives us, let's say, an outline that we may have. And we'll realize whether we got enough or not enough, okay, to deal with it and historical study. Then we'll use all the steps beginning with the first, and we already started that, exegeting the passage. We'll be doing all that. So here's the first text. Reading the text. Notice that. Vocabulary issues. So a few things when we were dealing with that. Oh, okay, we were struggling on a few words, and maybe there's a question or two arose there or here. So there are some vocabulary issues. Now, when I'm saying reading the text, I'm not saying do all of the word studies and everything else. I'm saying just get a reading, just get a smooth ability, a basic vocabulary which makes some sense, obviously, and just be able to get through the passage smoothly. And syntax issues, we raised a few of those, didn't we? And there'll be more that'll be raised when we get into more details of it, but at least we've raised a few, and we know where we're going to have to do some work. Text issues, we can see that on the page when it says there's our own issue here. Okay, we don't have to do that. That's pretty simple spot. Okay, that's all we wanted to do at this point: get to a reading level and find out where some of the hang-ups are going to be for us. Okay, and I think we've seen some of that already. I could have pointed out, frankly, more than but I don't want to jump the gun, but I want to try to be at your level here as we work through this. Okay. Are you searching the file?
I'm looking for the adapted section.
Oh, it's the very end of that section before the John Rand. It's very brief there for us. I might mention this about that, is that some people think, oh, when you adapt the method, that means you're cutting it down. So if you take Key's book, on interpreting, his exegetical work for pastors and students, teachers, what it's called, what that. When he's got a full method, and then he's got a less than full method, or a compressed method. That's not what my adaptation is all about. I'm not saying cut out the steps or collapsing the steps into smaller groups so we don't have to do as much work. I'm not saying that.
Actually, I can see your paragraph up there is matching.
Yeah, right.
I'm looking for a way so I don't have to take something else.
Right. That's exactly right. Yes. Yeah. Now, the notes I'm going to take is when we solve some of these things here. Right now, there's no notes to take that I'm aware of that I'm going to put down on mine as on the reading or the text thing. I mean, I have a vocabulary down, and I pretty much know where the syntax issues are. And I can see the text issues that I'm going to do, but I'm not going to write anything down at this stage. It's just, in fact, if it wasn't for the fact that we're doing this in a class setting, I wouldn't even have A, B, and C there. It would just be reading. In fact, simply what I would do, I might just simply do that. I just might read my Greek text right into that section and just leave it. That's what I will do. I'll do that. If I can find out where I got my things. I'll do that. Where did I put that in? This is part of the problem. I don't know what to do with it. I'll find it. That's what I do my problems.
I found a pretty neat Bible online too, or Greek text online. I don't know who it's made by, but it's just I don't know what the website is, but you can do the same thing with that. Just cut and paste out a brief and put it right in Word and stuff, since I don't have no problem.
So you don't have the products? Oh, yeah. Well, I have the text here. Where did I put that thing? Somewhere in my file, I got these texts here. Let's put the text. Let's see. I'm just going to read it. Go ahead, if you've got it, go ahead and read it into yours if you wanted to do it that way. I think it's a valuable thing to do. That way you got something right in front of you to work through your text, and you can make notes on, highlight something that you're stuck on this word or that syntax, whatever, you can do that. So, let's see. We dealt with the overview. We got where I put that where I had the text. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there it is. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Beautiful. Okay, group work. Read the text. I don't really need, for my work, I really don't need that in there. Let's see if it comes out correctly. Oh, there it is. Pretty neat, huh? Saves a lot of time. Right now, let's see how much keep this source for. Ooh, but they went off and make it smaller than that.
How'd you do that? Just by right-clicking on it?
What?
How'd you just do that?
Yeah,
you right-click on that. It's the
that little when you read something into it, that little box, and it says keep the formatting of the source or the formatting of the document you're putting into it, whatever. Okay. If you put it in the format of the document you put it into, it wouldn't come out. It comes out with a different font. That's why it's the same source, because the font issues and all that. So reading the text. Bottom line is, I am committed to be able to smoothly read that. Okay? And if you're having a problem, for instance, you might want to say, well, I have a problem with that. And then you could highlight it or do something with it, so that you remind yourself of that and work on that. See, right? There's a lot of things you can do just by putting the text up there. Okay. On the historical study, let's work on that. You're going to be working on the reading more, but let's think through the historical study. We want to start with the writing. Now, why again do we start with the writing?
Basically, what we're dealing with is the writing.
So it is the primary historical record of what book, right? I mean, that's it. That's the primary thing. So I want to get a little bit of a historical overview of this book. I started with a map. Okay. I copied that off. Came up pretty good. A map of the area that I determined that it was at. Now, of course, in the very beginning of the book, you recall, it says here, Paul, the apostle of Christ Jesus, who wrote God to the saints who are, and then there's this textual problem, but it says at Ephesus. Right? So at least there's a historical issue that occurs there. We know that. Okay. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many question marks. Okay. But what I want to do at this stage is, let me ask you to get a kind of a historical overview of things. Where do you go? What source are you going to use? Isby?
Yeah.
Okay, or an encyclopedia. That's what that is. Okay. Use an encyclopedia.
Like for Ephesus.
Look up Ephesus. It'll give you information on the writing itself. It'll tell you about the place, location. Then it'll tell you also about the argumentation involved with the textual problem in our text. Okay, the pros and the cons and whatnot. So you're at least familiar with that issue. But what you really need to come to conclusion at this point is you don't have to solve that problem. Okay. At this stage, just not what we're after at this point. All we need to know is, okay, what are the parameters of where these people live and where this writing went to, right?
Well, is it writing to Ephesus, or is it written in Ephesus, or is it written in...
Well,
Ephesus,
right.
never went to Ephesus.
But it says to the saints.
Right.
Someplace.
Yeah.
Okay. So where are those saints? And by perusing to some degree the information you get there, you'll have some conclusion that you'll come to. Now, the conclusions in the argument relate to the fact that it's map in some ways. Because this map then shows Ephesus someplace on there. Not very soon, not really well there.
Right in the middle.
Yeah, right in this area over here. Okay. But the argument says, well, but it could be a circular letter going to where though? Around the whole world? No, not really. In the vicinity here, you see. So I'm really looking at a book that either was written to specific people here or in this vicinity, so I pretty much know the parameters of what to consider when it comes to the kind of the nature of the people that are there, what their ethnic background might be, what religion or religions they might be a part of, or what historical circumstances are affecting the writer and readers during the time frame of this, right? So I pretty much have a parameter then to work with here, okay? So I have starting with historical overview here. At least I know some place. I know a place, okay? There's more to the historical overview than this. I mean, I've got to put more in there. What else do I need? Well, I need dates and stuff like that. So I need to put more stuff in there. Okay, so where are we going to go to do that? Same source. Why compound sources? You don't need it. You have all kinds of compounding of sources to that, right? So they'll tell you, and it's approximately what date we'll be talking about. Anybody know? Anybody have any source there or a date? Actually, one of the sources that go ahead.
Right.
I mean, Izzy's got that stuff too. I mean, it's...
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Say, what did it say here? It say 90.
90? Throw Izzy away. That's what's
It's giving, actually what it's doing is giving the different arguments. So it doesn't tell you what it thinks it is, it just tells you what different. So some people are saying it says about 61.
About 61, yeah. Okay, right. Now here's a source that I dug out. I'm trying to find it where I put it. You know, by the dollar and computer. Where do you put this stuff? Okay, Ephesians. So in Ephesians, there's a source here. Okay, an introduction to Ephesians that I dug off of the internet here. Okay. So here's an introduction. How many pages are we in here? Okay, 4 pages. Okay, and with these 4 pages, I can do a lot of the work that that we're talking about here. I can talk about the destination. Okay, this is not too big. I can find something. I'll get some sense as to the problem that's involved with this, and I don't need to solve the problem, right? All I need to do is to look and see if, in fact, there's any consensus as to, the range of solutions, and if it helps me to know where the people are. Here, his conclusion is, the best solution to the problem is that the letter was sent to many Pauline churches and others throughout Asia Minor. Okay. Port of entry being Ephesus. Okay. Asia Minor. I'm talking Asia Minor here. Okay. So at least, without having to solve that problem, pretty much, if you need to track that down further and say, okay, how many scholars agree with that, you could look up in introduction books, one or two or more if you like, and you could find out that in fact, everybody agrees, Asia Minor is the area, regardless of the specifics on this problem in Ephesus here. So at least I can say, okay, Asia Minor is the area, right? I have here something on authorship, and I'm not going to, here I am, see, I'm a strong believer in the integrity of the text. When it says, Paul, apostle of Christ Jesus, I'm not going to argue the point. I'm going to say, who wrote the book? Paul wrote the book, and I'm not going to search that out and do a whole lot of research on that problem, okay, because it's not a problem for me, okay? Paul wrote the book. Now, if I was doing a dissertation, don't get me wrong, if I was doing a dissertation, you'd have to do other things. But I'm talking about practical working with the text here. And traditional view that Paul wrote it, and not only that, it says he wrote it, so I'm going to take his word for it. I see a lot of other arguments, and all. I'm familiar with that anyway, but I don't need that information. What I do need is the date and provenance of this. Okay, I do need that. Okay, so the most common understanding of the date puts it at approximately 60 to 62, Paul's first Roman imprisonment. That's important. Okay, he's in jail. All right. Okay, his first Roman imprisonment. Okay, those who reject Paul, well, forget that. I'm not rejecting it. That's not critical at this point. And that's the main thing I need to know at that point. Okay, I would probably want to research a little bit to see is there anything going on at 60 to 62 AD time frame in that area of a political nature in society? What is going on? Is there anything that I need to know about that? See what I'm saying? So I might want to research it.
Christians being persecuted, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Are they being persecuted?
Because it went off and on.
Yeah. So you want to get some little information on that, and that might affect. It might affect something in the book. It might not. At least not in your passage. Okay, that's important. Okay.
When they say Apostle Andrew may have been martyred in 60.
Okay.
So
some persecution. Yeah. But who's the who's the Caesar at this point? And has he? Is it Nero? Has he gone bonkers yet? Has in fact the Christians been targeted as opposed to, let me put it another way, we know historically that approximately 64 AD when Nero went after the Christians. Okay, that's the point historically at which the Jews decided, hey, we're not part of them, they're not part of us. Prior to that time, frankly, Christianity was considered a sect of Judaism. Okay? And so, if you follow that historical line of thought, then this is being written at a time frame when Christianity is still considered in many parts of the ancient world as a sect of Judaism, and not a complete different religion in its own right, separated from Judaism. Okay? That might affect something that we find in fact someplace along the line. Okay. And so we have that important theme. Now that's important for us, and because we're talking about the purposes of the book here, right? Well, I need to know that. I need somebody to tell me that. Because I'm not studying the book from page 1, verse 1 on, right? So I need to get me to where I am, which is in chapter 3. And so do you. Right? So purpose of the book is difficult to nail down. Oh, well, gee, no, that's a downer right there. Right? Well, maybe yes and maybe no. I mean, it tells me something about the book. Right? It's not crystal clear cut, maybe, as some other books might be, such as John, why did I write the book? He told you why he wrote the book. Certain theological and ethical themes play an important role. Some include, okay, here we got some things. And is this going to affect my passage? Well, we'll find out. The Trinitarian and gracious nature of salvation. My passage. Prayer for spiritual understanding. There is my passage right there. Transformation. That seems to be, that includes this in his outline somewhere. Right. We're at the nature of the church, unification of Jew and Gentile in one new man. It's interesting in light of the relationship between Jew and Gentile in the world there in society. Positional practice unity in the church, that's going beyond my book, and my passage. Spiritual gifts, corporate holiness, husband and wife. Okay, so central organizing theological idea is that through Christ's own work, I have my word about the church. Okay, and who humanity is. In the case of Jew and Gentile. Well, that gives me something to work with, right? Okay. Now here's the teaching outline that he gave. Let's see where my passage is. My passage is where? Here it is. Prayer for the new community. Well, that might, at least I can see how he's connecting it to the whole then. Paul's role in establishing the new community, prayer for the new community. So it has something to do with the Jew and Gentile thing, according to him. According to him. Okay. And that brings up something else I might mention. That when we're jumping in the middle of a book like this, we haven't had yet the opportunity to do all the research ourselves and come to our own outlying conclusions, let's say, right? Okay. So we depend upon other people to help us get there. And if you don't like, or if you wonder whether he's got it right, check a couple of other outlines to see if it's in the same general, area. And if it is, go with it. Now, later on, when you do your own thing, keep in mind that you might not fully agree with that at that stage. But that's what you're going to start with right now. Okay? Right? So keep that in mind when you work on your own little project. Okay? You can certainly change it. So here's his outline. How far is it going? Oh, that's it. Okay? Right. Now that gives me a lot of information right there in short compass. I think I know quite a bit already. There's some things I don't quite know yet. But let me do this. You see, I can take this now and I can just either connect it up to my document, maybe just read it into my document, or have my document refer to this to give me that background so it's before me I know what I found it, right? Okay. There's other sources. Do you have any sources in your computer or in your books down there that can tell you some of this information?
Not so much a commentary.
Commentaries?
Sometimes the commentaries have the intro to the book, there's sometimes better than others.
Got the IVP Bible background commentary.
Okay.
I use that one quite a bit for this kind of stuff.
Okay. Here's another source, if I can get to it. I don't know if this will come up.
Have you ever considered any of Randolph David's work?
I didn't try.
Who?
You already got it.
Have you seen it's a big 18-volume set by Randolph Yeager?
Okay.
On the Renaissance New Testament.
This one?
Have I seen it?
Must be.
I think I have, but it's been a long ago, and I wouldn't have been anywhere where I'm at now, probably at Dallas.
I will.
When I do my dissertation.
I know.
You got that?
That's a good.
You got the whole set?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Let's see if this will connect up. I don't know if we're on the internet or not here.
Looks like it.
Okay. Now let's go to the Net Bible study things. Okay. Let's see if I can get to the right place here. What is this? Yeah, what is it? That's Dell. Get off my computer, Dell.
I get the Dell off your computer.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
I think your link is broken. It doesn't.
Something's not working here, right? Well, let's see. What was this? Net Bible, how to get that Bible?
What about, I've never tried this, but do journal articles ever deal with a book in general? Or
Sometimes.
do
Sometimes. I wanted to get to this one here, this Net Bible. I don't know. Oh, I didn't know there was one spelled that way.
His name is Goodweek.
Okay, let me see if I can find get it spelled right. See if it'll come up and I'll show you the source that I found very helpful as what should we say, very cryptic, well outlined and effective source. I guess it's not connecting me up here. Maybe it's just weak or something. Very good.
What's it?
Right. Huh?
Where's the antenna?
It's yours in the church.
Wow.
It's in our
Let's see, this is
What's the yeah.
You got one on that? I can't find it. Okay, here you go. This is the site, I think. So, search. I think they've done something with their. That's the way it looks. It looks so different. Okay, I want articles. I want author passage. Okay,
I seen some stuff like Daniel Wallace on there. I think that's the same place. He's got some
a lot of
articles on introductions.
so let's go with Ephesians. Okay. Okay. And now, and here we got, here's one. Introduction, that's the kind of thing I'd be looking for, right? Introduction, outline, 29 yards right in front of me. How do you think there? Dan Ross did this one. Huh?
I told you.
Yeah, Dan Ross did this one here. Okay, so here's a good one. I might want to check this just to see about that other article, see if that's consistent. Oh, he deals a lot with the author. What do you do with that? Okay, he does a lot. Oh, I'm going to follow others. I'm not going to argue that. Literary argument. Oh, that's following. Forever. I'm going to read this one. Place of origin, okay. The arguments there, Caesarea, Ephesus, Rome. Date, you're putting it there at what? 59 to 61. Okay, and basically in the same ballpark. He's in jail. Okay, so that's the same as we had before, right? He's in jail. Tells us the destination, production, circular letter issues. It goes into that other column that we're talking about. Occasion, purpose, method, and composition. See, all this is helpful for us. Okay, to see that as a source, purpose. Okay, now here's something. Listen before Paul heard the compares in Colossae, intended to write to churches they admire outside of the church. Summary of his theology is more practical form. So you can see how he's dealing with that, right? Okay, so, and now we need to get along with one another, so there's a community of Christ. Similar Romans, same time dissimilar, contemplative, summing up key theological themes. Okay. Here's something. Ever since Claudius is expulling Jews from Rome, and there was a tension between Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians. Both books have something that theme. Church body of Christ, put in a sentence. Okay, church maintaining unity. Argument opens Queen of Epistles. I haven't heard that before. Reading of the saints who are faithful. Okay. Launches into praise, theological preface. That probably has the outline somewhere along was my passage here. Okay, having his first name treatment, I'll praise once again for the audience for this hinges between two sections. Two sections, alright, something maybe I gotta figure out where they are, right? Prayer for their application. This is fitting introduction to the last three chapters, which turn indicative into imperatives. Indicatives, I guess, of Jews and Gentiles in one body or whatever. You didn't have to bring it back and do that earlier to see if that's what it's got. Include the prayer of the recognition once again of God's ability to answer. Okay. Second major section, etc. That's the rest of the book. Outline. Unity of the church positionally, prayer for knowledge, to understand the position, that's one prayer, so there's one more prayer in the book for them, right? Okay. Vertical, horizontal, holders, mystery, community, section, prayer for love, to maintain the church's practical unity, okay, prayer for love. So we can see where he's going to conclude there. Well, as we examine it, we'll have to see if we can agree with that. But that's his interpretation of it. Okay, but he's dealing with unity as a major theme there. So we'll, as we work through, we'll have to say, well, gee, is that really the theme I see there? Unity. The important thing here is not that we buy off of anybody's outline, and even their interpreted outline like this is, but how the whole is connected. Okay? So what leads into my passage and what leads out of my passage. Right? And so to see exactly how I am going to see where my passage fits. Okay? But it's a good source. Okay? You have a lot of different sources now. You've got this kind of a source. We've got article source. We've got encyclopedia source. We've got introduction book sources and commentary for potential sources. Okay? So our key, again, here's my stuff here. So the key here now for us to do is to make sure we got a sense of the writing. That's the location. So we got content, and I can get a sense of the content through some of these articles. And so I might, in this point, I might just reference those places instead of reading it in there. Okay. And then the literary overview leaves something that's not in any of the things that I've read yet. Okay? And that has to do with the genre issue. Right? And the question is, we need to nail down here is this a letter? And if it's a letter, what is the breakdown of the format, genre format? And where does the body of the letter begin? Where is the prayer formula, if there is one, Thanksgiving formula? Okay, that's really key to the genre of the letter. Okay. So those are the things I want to nail down in this literary overview before I'm finished. I'll have it down here. Okay. And so you want to do that, something about genre. Okay. So what I'm going to do, my document that I'm producing for our purposes here, is I'm going to reference, in the content overview, I'm going to reference some of the articles that I put out, maybe Wallace, and then other guy, whatever his name was, I'll reference that in there. Literary overview, I'm going to put my own, do research on my own with respect to genre. Okay? So that is but I just don't have it yet on my computer. But, I got my stuff in the card. Let's see. Slide here. Well, I have to do well, I have to figure it out. I can't find it offhand. They break down the genre I'm talking about here. And the source for that is what? What's the primary source in our textbook that we have there for determining the genre of letters? Remember? One source at least is Doty, D-O-T-Y. Okay? Oh, here it is. I should look at the beginning. Formal aspects from Doty. That is primitive Christianity. There it is right there. We've got the letter opening in the first two verses. The Thanksgiving formula, which you recall from our previous studies, is exceedingly significant because it highlights the primary themes that it's going to go after. And that, I take it from chapter 1, verse 3, all the way through chapter 2, verse 10. And the body of the letter doesn't begin to chapter 2, verse 11. Okay. And there's a formal opening, and that's cataloged conclusion in the trial log at 321. That brings me to 321. And that for information in the closing. So at any rate, so I will read that into my notes here in my passage. And then I'll have that information in front of me so I know where my passage fits in the overall flow of the letter. Okay. So that'll be part of my literary overview. And you will want to put something in there yourself. Some of the encyclopedia articles that you have may or may not include the genre issue. But since it's in my notes, that's one thing to look for. You will want to put something in there. Okay? Now the authorship, when it comes down to authorship, okay, I already know who wrote it, so I'm gonna say, well, Paul. Okay, I would say Paul wrote it, okay, for his purposes. I'm not going to argue the point. If I want to argue the point, I can just footnote Wallace, because he argued everybody's point. And he came out the same place that I did, so let's argue that point to Paul. But I am interested in the agenda. I want to track that down further. Now that's where I'm going to put anything that comes up that is specifically related to Paul and the readers here. Okay? That is going to be in part discovered from some of the things we already read. In fact, like what the Wallace was saying about why he wrote, the purposes and whatnot. Okay, before we got to the theme, do you recall that? Well, those were kind of agenda items. These are themes, his theological understanding, a summary of his theological viewpoints, his emphasis upon Jew and Gentile. Okay, so that's kind of the agenda, and it's primarily, apparently, according to Wallace anyway, apparently a teaching agenda, not necessarily a restructuring or a condemnation or a challenging agenda. And that would bring us down to the attitudes. Okay? The attitudes, what is as we read the book, and as others have read the book, is his attitude toward the people positive? Is he reflecting some impatience with them? Or is he praising them for all the good things they do and think? Or is he in fact challenging them someplace along the line? What is his attitude towards them? And that's reflected in the reading, reading the book. So some of these other things. So those are things I want to nail down here. Because it could affect my interpretation of my passage. I mean, is he making this prayer because you stupid people, let me pray for your that God will give you some kick in the seat of the pants through this prayer so you get on the stick. Is that what his attitude is? Or is it in fact a prayer that a fatherly figure might make on behalf of his children who are all doing well, but this is a general, let's say a general prayer that is very positive and non-threatening, non-challenging. Okay, what is his attitude? That can affect my interpretation of this. The readers, we already saw some of that, who they were. Well, they're people named Minor at least. Okay? And basically, if you've done any work on that problem, that location, or whatever, you might then just simply read that in there if you've done any. If not, fine. Give a general statements that at least tie you into the locale and the nature of the people. So who they were, and where they were, and what their problem is, or what their relationship to the author is. I mean, are they known? Do they know one another? I mean, what is this? You see? And so we want to get a little bit of that in there. So we got a feel for it. Okay? How they would take the reading of this letter. Okay, so that's what we want to put some information in there. Okay, so tomorrow when I come in, I'll have some information in there. Okay. That'll give me okay, you get a feel for what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay. Right.
And a lot of this, obviously, we're getting ready to preach this stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of this may or may not come in to the message, but it gives you the context within the operator and with.
Right. Well, Yeah, but that's where it always ought to be, in the sense that I'm not studying so that I can talk to somebody else as much as I'm studying so that I can understand. And the secondary thing, I think, at least this is my point of view, the secondary thing is my ministry of it, right? In a very generalized sense, talk to me so that I've got something so I can talk to them, but I want it to speak to me first. I want to know this stuff for my own benefit. And who knows? Who knows how many of these things are going to come into play in my passage and hence in my sermon or my teaching, right? I mean, I might come up with something on, let's say, the attitudes that Paul has that might reflect upon the nature of the prayer, right? I mean, what kind of a prayer is this anyway, you see? I'm praying that I'm going to bow my knees to God and praying and He'll straighten your people up and give you something, or that might affect the way in which I even teach it, preach it, if I do it that way. Or is it something that is simply saying, oh, you wonderful people, I just want to have I just want God to give you a special blessing here, you see. Or is it in fact a prayer that is intimately tied to a theme that he had just been talking about, right? In which case that will very much come into play, right? So, a lot of that, you don't know where it's going to lead you because you haven't done your exegesis of that passage yet, right? So you don't really, but you don't want to spend all your time on this. Spend 4 hours on this, 2 hours on the exegesis. That's not what you want to do.
What would you typically say of time allowance for this kind of thing?
This, of course, part of that is related to what prior knowledge this person had. So I can't, it's an individualized thing for me. For me, how much time would it take for me, given my prior knowledge of all this? Well, I wouldn't spend more than an hour. Maybe 45 minutes to nail down what I need to know so I can go to my passage and get with it. Now, for somebody else, without any prior knowledge, and they may want to do something else, spend a lot more time. This is then just helping me to just kind of get started with the book, the overall picture of the book, so that then I can start here, right? Foundational and frequent steps to integrate that, get good platform. Okay? Before we're done this weekend, Lord willing, we'll have it all taken care of, this whole area. And this is where all the time is going to be spent.